They come from the bowels of hell, a transformed race of walking dead, zombies guided by a master plan for complete domination of the earth.
Why was Vampira important to your story?
I wanted to write about Vampira because I wanted to honor her memory. She meant a lot to me. She was part of my Las Palmas experience because she lived in the neighborhood. And I also felt like her story, the hardships she endured, it, it kind of foreshadowed what was to come for me and Holly. Me and Holly made plans to have dinner with Vampira. And unbeknownst to us, she shows up at this little Italian dive of a restaurant with two of her friends. You know, one of them was Ed Ludlam, who lived across the street from me and Holly, and he was a theater director. And another was an actor friend of theirs. And what happened was the actor friend of theirs dominated the conversation. Me, and Holly wanted to have a nice intimate chat with Vampira and learn all about how did she get involved with Ed Wood. She was friends with James Dean. And what we got was this crackpot queen who dominated the conversation. Vampira couldn't say a thing. She never got a word in edgewise.
Your description of the dinner in the book, it is so funny because I can imagine how frustrated you were and you just wanted to stuff a napkin in that queen's mouth. Like, shut the fuck up.
I'm going to read you a little section of this. I squirmed in my seat and felt trapped in that booth, like a kid stuck on a carnival ride that wouldn't stop spinning, so excited to get on, and simply horrified when it actually took off, with the ghosts of Hollywood's past leading the way. I nodded, smiled politely, and tried to make sense of all the laughter and tears that were shared. These folks were like clowns without a circus, and from the perspective of a judgmental, self-absorbed 26-year-old, they looked like broken down has-beens. Beautiful and accomplished in their prime, only to be cast aside for a younger, prettier, more desirable generation. They seemed so misplaced to me now, and it was so sad, so pathetic, and so horribly real. In that moment, the idea that they were a reflection of what I was to become was unbearable. I was too young and too ignorant to understand that they were the lucky ones. They achieved their success. They made it. And despite the awful passage of time, the terrible ravages of age, and pop culture's ugly disregard, their salad days were rich, their memories golden and cherished. When the ride was over, the fun they experienced and the joy they shared was all that really mattered.
It is such exceptional writing. It is so descriptive, and it's this thing about life.
It wasn't until probably 12 drafts later when I came up with that paragraph, because I started to look at them, from my perspective as a person who was at that time 59 years old, and thinking, well, they were the ones who were lucky.
Now, was her career notoriety, Plan 9 from Outer Space, was that all like 20 years before Elvira, or what's the timeline with them?
Plan 9, well, see, first of all, she was television's first
Right.
horror hostess. That's how she became famous in Los Angeles. That's how, eventually Ed Wood asked her to be in Plan 9 from Outer Space, and she kind of thought it was beneath her.
How did Vampira lead you to find a publishing deal in 2023?
I was researching for publishers for my book, and I stumbled upon Glamour Ghoul. So I bought it immediately, and I read it. And after I read it, I thought, wow, this publisher is perfect for Love You Madly, Holly Woodlawn. And so that's how Vampira led me to discovering Feral House.
Out of all the Vampira stories, is there one thing in particular that you remember about her?
When I think of Vampira, the one word that comes to mind is delightful. You know, it's so funny because her public image is that of a glamour ghoul. But I thought she was just this sweet, precious woman who she was always happy and always smiling. And she had these beautiful, scintillating blue eyes. They were gorgeous. And I remember that day, the sunlight catching them. And she smiled and she lit up, and I thought she was wonderful.
What I need is a vampire cocktail to settle my nerves. It'll not only settle them, it will petrify.